Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. In today's special episode, we sat down with Bob Gourley, Chief Technology Officer at OODA, and John Mac Ghlionn, researcher and correspondent at the Brownstone Institute. They touch on the Metaverse. What is it, and how they see it expanding on the global stage going forward, and how bad actors like China could get involved. Let's dive in. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me back on.
There's a new virtual reality universe called the Metaverse, and some are calling it the next internet. So to begin, how would you describe it? What is the Metaverse?
I do see the Metaverse as the next wave of internet technologies. The first wave being the original internet of the 1990s, the second wave being the internet of mobile devices and cell phones. This third wave brings virtual environments and persistent online experiences.
I suppose when people hear Metaverse, they automatically think of Facebook, or the company previously known as Facebook, changed its name to Meta. Mark Zuckerberg has grand plans for all of us to move into the Metaverse. So in a nutshell, the Metaverse is closely tied to Web 3.0, or the third iteration of the internet. So with the Metaverse, we will have an immersive, persistent, virtual environment. It will kind of blend virtual reality with physical reality. So you will have AR, augmented reality. You will obviously have virtual reality, but you'll also have aspects like quantum computing, AI, biometrics, all of these aspects thrown into a sort of digital blender, if you will. And that is, in a nutshell, what the Metaverse is. Now, it's important to add that right now, the Metaverse is more theoretical. It's more of an abstract concept than a physical or digital reality. But the foundation is being set as we talk now. So by 2030, a lot of experts are saying, experts I've spoken with, they predict that the Metaverse will be more of a reality. So we're about eight years away from really entering the Metaverse, if you will.
What are the benefits of this Metaverse?
One of the pros of the Metaverse is an ability to have trusted relationships with others that endure in a virtual space, as well as contribute to multiple use cases across many industries and functions. For example, education, a place where you can go and learn anything from the great masters, or enhanced healthcare, a place where you can tap into the greatest healthcare experts you need for your situation, or in collaboration in business, a place where you can link people together to create new capabilities and add value, whatever your business is. So there's a lot of promise to the Metaverse.
I suppose in these times, with COVID, with a pandemic, with different variants, bringing the world to a screeching halt. You know, we just get going and then we have to isolate. And so with the Metaverse does offer an opportunity for people who are isolated to maybe form connections with people all around the world. There is an aspect as well that if your job is, shall we say, not very exciting, you can live an other sort of existence in the Metaverse. You know, you can live through your avatar. You can visit, or should I say, visit different places in the world, places that you might never be able to visit. Rome, Paris, wherever it may be. An important aspect with the Metaverse as well is that with haptic technology, you'll be able to maybe put on your VR headset or your AR glasses, but you'll also be able to reach out and touch something, or at least imitate what it's like to touch something, to feel something. So there are most definitely positives to the Metaverse, especially for people who are maybe isolated or very lonely.
And I think you touched on the fear. So on the flip side, what are the issues or cons of this?
You know, there's been problems with each of the previous two waves of the internet, problems with crime and fraud and lots of other issues, even nation states getting into the internet to hack each other and to manipulate each other. So we shouldn't really expect the coming metaverse to be any more secure. In fact, there's a lot of indications that it could actually be less secure. There could be some bigger problems with the metaverse. One key problem, if more and more of your data in your life is online, that makes you a bigger target for fraudsters and criminals. They can learn more about you so they can deceive you or deceive others into thinking they're you, as one simple example.
The biggest fear, and I think this is something a lot of viewers could maybe relate to, perhaps your job is not very exciting. You don't particularly maybe enjoy your Monday to Friday 9 to 5, 9 to 6 existence. So there is the fear of addiction. So you have this, as I said, it's an immersive environment. It's persistent. You don't turn the metaverse off. You know, you don't really turn the internet off. So there is this fear, shall we say, that it becomes too good. And why should I ever leave this world? Because my real life is not that exciting. But when I'm living here through my avatar or however I will live out my existence in the metaverse, it's far more exciting. I think there is a fear there. Also, this is a fear that hasn't been talked about very broadly, but I think it's a legitimate one. You have people who will most definitely want to enter the metaverse. You'll also have a lot of people saying, whoa, that's not for me. So I'm afraid you'll have this sort of further division of society between people who are immersed in the metaverse and people who want to have nothing to do with it for understandable reasons. So these are just two fears. There are many more.
So that kind of sounds like it's bringing in privacy issues. But beyond that, what are some other issues you see as popping up?
You know, privacy is one of the biggest issues we're tracking, but the nation state involvement in the metaverse is something I'm really concerned with. Now, at first, this may sound like privacy, but it's to the extreme. Nation states like China are already investing in the metaverse in ways that I believe will help them conduct extreme surveillance of everyone, anybody in the metaverse, not just their own citizens. And this has a detrimental effect on freedom of speech wherever you are. So this extreme surveillance by hostile nations like China is a key issue. Another is espionage. How do you know who is in a virtual world with you? And what are you safe talking about? Maybe you're collaborating on your latest business product or service, and unbeknownst to you, someone else is there recording everything and will be using that for their own purposes.
It sounds like in the metaverse, there's a level of anonymity, which brings up questions of privacy. So in this kind of a setting, how do you know who you're interacting with?
You know, it comes down to the community that was built there. If I join a community and they tell me that they have taken steps to maintain my privacy, and if I look into a metaverse room and I see there's 3 other virtual avatars there, can I be convinced that there's only 3 people in that room? Well, if I read the community guidelines and their security policy, it may give me some comfort about that. If the community has no policy and no security architecture, there's no reason to believe that you are having a private conversation. So we're going to have to use judgment a lot. And right now, it seems to be the Wild West. So there's much more room for improved security and privacy in the metaverse.
If I'm being brutally honest, there's just no way. There's no way you will know, because this is a very important point as well. Who will regulate the metaverse? Who's going to govern the metaverse? We see with cryptocurrencies, for example, at the moment, the US government is desperately trying to get its head around, the concept of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the other thousands of cryptocurrencies. Now, they will just be one aspect, one branch on the metaverse tree. Now, US government members of the US government are struggling to get their heads around a simple enough concept, such as cryptocurrencies. But when you throw in cryptocurrency with blockchain technology, AI, quantum computing, and all of this, we're really not prepared for the future that awaits us. This is another thing as well. Technology is evolving at such a rapid rate that legislation can't keep up. Our brains can't keep up with the evolution that's taking place. Which brings me back to your question: how will you know? I don't know. I don't think you will know. At least not at the start. It will take, in my opinion, it will take many years for the regulators to catch up with the metaverse.
So I think you touched on it lightly about China investing very heavily in the metaverse, but what could they gain from such a big investment?
A big thing they're doing already is trying to collect as much data as they can on individuals. The metaverse adds a new component to the kinds of data they can collect. They can collect more information on individual desires. What does this person really want? And if they know what a person really wants, and we all want different things, then they can help use that to manipulate you or turn you to their side or convince you to do something or to not do something, to influence you. And the amount of data in the metaverse that China and other hostile nations will be able to collect does pose that kind of danger. If they get that kind of information on what you desire and want, they will be well positioned to manipulate you more.
The two biggest players going forward in the metaverse game, or whatever you want to call it, will be the US and China. So China just last year, actually just a couple of months ago, released a white paper documenting the many ways in which the metaverse can be manipulated, strategies to kind of win the geopolitical game in the metaverse. China's already ahead of the game when compared with the US government, at least. They've established a metaverse committee. So you have Chinese telecom companies teaming up with Chinese big tech companies, plotting, scheming, I suppose, coming up with ways of controlling the metaverse. And to control the metaverse, you will have to maybe suppress or limit the opposition. So yeah, there is a legitimate fear there, because if this is, which many experts say it is, the next step, the evolution of the internet, there's every reason to believe that bad actors will have a vested interest in controlling the metaverse narrative. And for example, hacking is already a major, major issue. Look at the havoc that China has wreaked on US government, and was it last year Microsoft was hacked by Chinese-backed hackers. So anything that can be hacked will be hacked. And the metaverse, I think, at least at the start, will be ripe for hacking, for negative interference.
Could, say, China, for instance, use this against America, say maybe in terms of war?
Yes, and now there's a lot of different levels of war. One thing that bothers me already, the full metaverse is not here yet. Let's give it another 10 years before it's really, really here. But we're seeing parts of it. We're seeing many smaller metaverses, including one called Decentraland, a place where there's virtual land that can be bought and people can interact using avatars. Many companies are buying land in Decentraland. Many countries are also buying land there. Some have established embassies. Now, in China, a few media companies have bought property there, including the South China Morning Post, a large media outlet which is really controlled by the Communist Party. They're very pro-communist outlet. They bought one of the largest pieces of virtual land there, and they have said they intend on using it to show the history of the Asian region. Do you have any doubt that that history is going to be biased, and it's going to show a history that the Communist Party wants people to believe? Now, that's not direct war, but it's propaganda, and it influences things.
So Beijing has what's known as the Belt and Road Initiative, where they help out developing countries, but then these countries get into debt with Beijing. It's what's known as debt diplomacy, and that leads to kind of leverage over these countries. So in the metaverse, do you see a virtual version of this happening in the future?
That's a very good question, and I haven't examined that in enough detail, but I would say that we have seen the digital component of the Belt and Road Initiative. Some people are calling it the Digital Silk Road or the Digital Belt and Road, but it is the providing of fiber optics and IT equipment and computers and servers and software to companies where they're putting the Belt and Road Initiative. And we have already seen examples of that being done for hostile purposes, conducting surveillance in those countries and moving data back to China. Some countries have their own totalitarian governments. They like this kind of surveillance equipment to surveil their own people, unfortunately. So there is many purchases of this directly by some of these countries. So that's in the physical world. We have to assume that in the metaverse, there will be other establishments like that. Imagine TikTok 10 years from now, and imagine a 3D virtual environment, the metaverse 10 years from now, and imagine China's control over platforms like TikTok. I could see them weaponizing information in ways detrimental to open societies.
So with China's Belt and Road Initiative, a lesser known part of the BRI is the DSR, or Digital Silk Road. So essentially, this is China's plan to kind of roll out software and hardware in countries around the world and basically control the internet in different countries. So right now, the last time I checked, there were 30 countries signed up to this Digital Silk Road. And it's essentially you have CCP-backed companies coming in and laying the foundation for the internet, controlling what the people can see, or more importantly, what they cannot see. We saw it recently play out in Cuba, violent protests. A lot of protesters were taking footage on their cell phones, showing the world how the regime was acting. The Cuban government was very quick to shut down the internet, but what later materialized is that China actually had a major role in installing the internet there in Cuba. So China played a massive part in kind of shutting down the footage that was being shown to the world. Now, I think this is a very interesting point going forward into the metaverse, because who has the power to essentially shut down the internet or to control who gets to enter the metaverse, control what they get to do in the metaverse, what they get to buy, what they get to see, what they get to hear, and so forth.
Now, in the real world, some are noting that land is disappearing and in high demand. And so in this metaverse, there's already been reports of people spending a lot of money to buy up virtual land. And some reports are also noting that China is buying up a lot. So why is that?
You know, in open societies, the governments can be slow to react sometimes, and maybe that's a benefit. But it also means that governments are not, open society governments are not going to be buying large plots of land in this future metaverse unless we, the people, give them that requirement to. It's really up to us to decide what we want to do in the metaverse today. So we need to think through, do we as individuals want to buy land in the metaverse? And do we want to band together as groups and buy bigger properties together in the metaverse? Do we want companies doing that for us? What is the role of our government? These are all early discussions.
For sure, this is a really interesting aspect and a really interesting point you bring up. Right now, virtual property is actually retailing for more than actual physical property. You see, and I hate using air quotes, but you see these plots of land selling for $250,000, $300,000. Now, the question is why? Why are people buying up virtual land? Right now, there is no obvious answer. Obviously, if you have $300,000, you're not the everyday average citizen. I guess most viewers watching this don't have $250,000 to spend on pixelated property. So it's a really good question. Why would China be purchasing property here? Probably there's the retail value. So if we look at digital property and the non-fungible tokens, it seems to be a sort of like a fad, this phase where people are this fear of missing out. Why are you buying this, pixelated images or pixelated property? Most people I've spoken with people who've dropped 50,000 on NFTs. They will say that their friends are doing it. They don't want to miss out. It's hot property. Maybe buy it, sell it on for a profit. Now, why the Chinese government would be getting involved, I don't really know, but that definitely deserves more scrutiny and more research.
You brought up regulation. So what would be some ways of stemming those risks?
I think we need to build a framework and think through steps at multiple levels. As individuals, we have things we can do, then also as communities and businesses and governments. As individuals, we all need to understand it's our responsibility to protect our personal information. So just like today, we talk about having strong passwords and multi-factor authentication and being careful what you put online, well, you have to keep doing that. Now, in the metaverse, you're also going to have to be very careful about who knows your true identity and what information of yours is in the metaverse and what do you say and do in the metaverse. You're going to have to think about all of that. You also need to think through which communities do you get involved with. Is that community safe enough for you to be there? So you need to understand what the community is doing. So that's at an individual level. Now, at a community level or a company level, there's things that companies and communities should do also. They should all think through their approach to security and privacy. Each should have a security officer or a privacy point of contact who can make sure they're doing the right thing for the individuals that interact with them. Governments have a role too, and in free, open societies where there's a rule of law, we need to think through how to protect people's privacy and not let our own countries surveil us too much, but also keep the hostile nations out. So there is a role for governments, including law enforcement.
Yeah, it all comes back to regulation, Tiffany. If there are no regulators, there are no rules. And if there are no rules, then bad actors will have a field day. I think we're living in a time as well. We've had this concept before where, the good guy or good will always prevail or justice will prevail. I think we're living in a time of severe injustice. I think we're living in a time where, for example, authoritarianism it's on the rise globally. So this is a great time to be alive if you're a dictator, if you have a penchant for totalitarian rule. So, for example, I think it was last year, a report released by cybersecurity experts that China had harvested the data of some 80,000 American civilians. So, and this is with the basic internet. So we can see just common sense logic tells us going forward that the metaverse will accumulate more data, far, far more data than the internet accumulates now. So will China be encouraged to enter the metaverse and take more data? Common sense tells me yes. This is something that needs to be talked about more in public. It needs to be talked about more in Congress. It needs to be discussed more by politicians. And now is the time to sit down with the experts, the people who are creating the metaverse, to draft some sort of regulation, some sort of rules, some stipulations. Now, to be proactive rather than reactive, because we've seen how it played out with big tech. The government tries to be reactive with the likes of Amazon and Facebook. They're like Frankenstein's monster. They're too powerful. They can't be controlled. they're monsters in their own right, and the US government, even the US government, the most powerful government in the world, is ill-equipped now to deal with the likes of Amazon. So let this be a lesson learned going forward into the metaverse. Act now before it's too late.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. All the best.
And for those just tuning in, that was today's special episode with Bob Gourley, Chief Technology Officer at OODA, and John Mac Ghlionn, researcher and correspondent at Brownstone Institute. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.